Welcome to Saulcast. Tonight we're talking about Season 5, Episode 8 of Better Call Saul, titled Bagman. We did our instant take earlier in the week. Those were our raw, immediate reactions to the episode. But tonight we're doing our full scene-by-scene recap and analysis. I'm Gil, here with my brother Adam.
Hello.
And my tech guy / brother Alun.
Yo.
And before we jump into the recap, just a quick reminder, if you're watching this video and you're enjoying it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and of course, Hector Salamanca style, hit the bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. If you're listening to this as a podcast, check out the link to see us on YouTube. And last tease before we get into the recap, big Saulcast announcement coming later in the episode.
That's right. It's gonna be special, guys. This will, you know how we get along really well, right? Because we're brothers and everything. This will pit us against each other.
Brother against brother.
That's right. The first Saulcast competition.
That's right. So, Bagman, Episode 8, let's get into it. First, right before the episode started, there was a warning on the screen. This program contains brief nudity.
I knew what to expect as soon as I saw that.
You knew it was going to be Saul, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So the episode starts out in the Salamanca's stash house. A lot of cars there. We see a car where the inside is covered in blood. A couple guys are cleaning it, playfully splashing blood on each other.
You know, they would never do that during these coronavirus times.
No, you've got to be careful.
They didn't know any better back then.
In the early 2000s. Car arrives, a Cadillac, I believe, and the two twins get out. They walk to the back room where there is a ton of money, and they grab $7 million, which just underscores how little $7 million is to the Salamancas.
Yeah, it was really just nothing at all.
And by the way, Miss Cybervamp in the chat stopped by just to say hello. Doesn't even watch Better Call Saul, but just stopping by to provide her support. So thanks for stopping by and have a good night. So once the twins have the $7 million, they leave the warehouse. And a little tidbit, right after they leave, we see a guy in the warehouse pick up a phone, call somebody, we don't know who, and say, I've got something for him if he's still interested. So this is a rat in the Salamanca organization tipping somebody off, hey, if you want to go steal $7 million, it's going on the road and it's an easy target.
You know, this is really concerning for the Salamancas because not that I'm a huge Salamanca supporter, but I'm concerned for them because that means just that we know of, there are already 2 leaks, right?
That's right. You've got Nacho and you've got this guy who I don't think we've seen before. And it's unclear who he called. The gang that showed up to take Saul's money, I don't think we know who they are. I think so. A few things about this scene. The guys splashing each other with blood is just a nice reminder for how dark and grimy the world is that Saul is entrenching himself within. It also, if we needed another reminder as to how much money the Salamancas have, like I said, this tells us why Lalo is totally unfazed no matter how big a dollar amount gets thrown at him.
So, and thinking about that, I had 2 different ways to interpret the fact that Lalo didn't go with the obvious choice for who to pick up the money, which was Nacho. And even Nacho seemed to suggest, Lalo seemed to suggest he wasn't totally ready to trust Lalo with that amount of money, right? Later in the episode, he says something like, $7
million.
Much
money can make somebody stupid, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways to look at this. Either Lalo is right not to fully trust Nacho yet because either maybe part of him is suspicious about something, or it takes a while to earn Lalo's trust, or it's because the $7 million doesn't really matter all that much to him, and he knew that this job was actually dangerous, and so he doesn't want to risk Nacho's life and is instead willing to risk Saul's because he means nothing to him.
Right. And also there was a theory floating around that Lalo may have set this up to sort of rob himself, maybe because he suspected that him getting out of jail is part of Gus's schemes. So in a way, he was making it look like somebody was attacking him, but not really. But I think seeing the guy in the stash house tip somebody off that the money was there to be stolen pretty much counters that theory.
Right.
We see Saul and Lalo in, I never know what to call this room, the little room at the jail where criminals meet with their lawyers.
Right.
And we see Lalo laughing while reading a newspaper, which says that Los Pollos Hermanos fire was ruled arson.
Right. Which means, I think that means he probably does fully trust Nacho, because he's just laughing it up that, oh yeah, my plan, he executed it.
Yeah, and I think he does also see Lalo he sees Nacho as a little bit of a loose cannon, right? After seeing him be so cavalier in going back into the house when the cops were there to steal the drugs. That's kind of how he gained Lalo's trust to begin with.
It's exactly the kind of thing a young Lalo would have done.
Exactly. He sees a little bit of himself in Nacho. A young Salamanca. So Lalo, and by the way, Quentin Tarantino would have loved this scene because Lalo's feet were very prominently featured.
Yeah. Which is also why I was a little grossed out for a second.
So Lalo starts giving Saul directions on where to pick up the $7 million. At first, Saul isn't writing anything down, and Lalo says, hey, write this down, man. It's complicado.
It's like when the waiter's taking your order, and you're just like, am I sure they're going to get all this just in their head?
Yeah, I bet Lalo hates that. If this was Goodfellas, there would be a Joe Pesci-esque scene where a waiter isn't writing anything down, and Lalo whips out a pistol and says, write this down.
Yeah. Dressing on the side.
And Lalo says, you'll meet my cousins there. They'll give you the money. You'll like them. They're good boys.
Which is exactly what Werner said about his boys.
Impossible for me to hear good boys without thinking of Werner. So a little tear drops every time I think of that.
Pour one out for Werner. Pour out some tears for him.
So Saul is reluctant, of course, to go on this journey to pick up the $7 million. And Lalo says, guess you're not the guy. No worries.
Do you think he would really have just let him go that easy?
I think it was I think short answer is no, but I also think Lalo was confident he was going to be able to rope him in.
Right.
I think he set him up to, Lalo set it up so that Saul would turn around and make a counteroffer and want to be a part of this.
Right. And Saul, you can count on Saul always to do that turnaround at some point. And either Saul's the one telling Kim, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But here's one way that you can. And the same thing as someone's telling Saul, you don't have to, but remember, it's $100,000.
Right. Lalo knows exactly how to bait him.
Right.
And so Saul, thinking he's finally learned what he's worth, he demands $100,000 for the job. And when Lalo says, dollars? That's a lot of money. And Saul tries to argue it for $7 million. And you said I'm the right guy for it. It's only 2% commission. Lalo smiles and says, all that for a drive across the desert? Done.
Do you think Lalo knows there's a very good chance that this is going to be more complex than anticipated?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. So is this a slip up by Lalo that he's not the one who sent Mike, of course, to go protect Saul. So if this were all up to Lalo, the plan would have failed. Saul would have been killed. The $7 million would have been stolen. So is this a slip up by Lalo? Should he have been smarter here?
I don't know. It's hard to say because Lalo looked so unconcerned about the fact that Saul was late, right?
Right.
And he even said to Kim, well, if he never turns up, then what difference will it make if you're looking for him or not right now?
Right.
Because he'd probably already be dead, basically.
Yeah.
And he seems really to not care. I think in part because it's such a small amount of money, and also he has no personal connection to Saul whatsoever.
Right. Saul's expendable. The $7 million are expendable. And there's a rat in the Salamanca organization, which of course he doesn't know about. So it's a somewhat calculated risk, I think. Of course, something could go wrong. He's just not that worried about it. And Drew Leonard in the chat says, Saul was saying $100,000 to himself, saying, is this how much I'll do it for? I think that it might be a little bit of that, but I think it's more he thinks $100,000 is a lot of money. So I think there was some discomfort in him asking for that amount. It still hasn't hit him just how much money gets traded in the drug trade in this organization.
And this reminds me of in Breaking Bad when Walt was talking about how important this operation is. He was talking to Skyler about it, and he said, without me, a business large enough to be listed on the Fortune 500 goes belly up overnight. I mean, we're talking billions and billions of dollars.
Right. And I think Saul is just starting to learn. Even by the end of this episode, I'm not sure if he realizes how much money he can ask for.
Right. Another consequence of this whole thing going wrong is that when Saul does make it back alive and somehow informs Lalo what happened, or maybe, I don't know if he'd have any reason not to, but let's say he says a bunch of guys tried to kill me and take the money. Now Lalo knows there's a rat in the organization. That's going to get to Nacho potentially, or Lalo is not going to trust anyone, and he might inadvertently discover that Nacho is the rat because he's looking for a different rat.
Right. And there is also the rival gang that the rat alerted to this money. So there could be some kind of mini war that breaks out here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I find it interesting that we don't know who that gang is. In our minds, I think it's been Gus versus the Salamancas. Is there a third entity out there, or are they somehow related to Gus? I'm not sure, but maybe we'll see in the next couple of episodes.
Yep.
So Kim arrives home and sees Saul taking a shower and said, and this is where that nudity finally came through. Kim says, evening shower, huh? And Saul says, yeah, got an early day tomorrow. And I love the fact that they know each other's schedules so well that she knows something is up just by the fact that Saul's taking a shower at night as opposed to in the morning. So Saul, in their newfound communication with each other, being honest and upfront, he tells her that he has some business news. And Kim asks, you're a friend of the cartel, is that it? Not exactly. And then he essentially explains the whole situation. Kim flat out tells Saul, I don't want you to do this. It's not safe. Saul tries to console her. He keeps telling her how it'll be fine. Nobody is going to suspect me, my beat up car, to be somebody with $7 million. I'm perfectly fine and safe. And she says, it sounds more like you're trying to talk yourself into this. So is there anything Kim could have said to stop Saul in this situation?
Maybe. If she said, if you do this, I'm leaving you. Maybe.
I don't know.
I think he would have just persuaded her anyway.
Yeah. I guess there's no other way this could have ended besides him deciding to go out in the desert.
I mean, you never really see Saul resist doing something that he wants to do.
No, you really don't. And I mean, one of the big themes of this episode, which we're going to get to more when we get to Mike's speech to Saul, is why is Saul doing all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked myself, on Mike's side of the house, he's doing it for other people. Is any part of Saul doing this for Kim? And as much as Saul loves Kim and wants to be with her, if I look at everything he's done in the series, there's not a lot he's done which I would trace directly back to Kim, where he's doing it for Kim or because he wants to be with Kim. She seems more like somebody he wants in his life, but I don't see her as a major motivation for him necessarily, which I find interesting. And what does Saul think comes after this $100,000? Because he keeps telling Kim, I don't want to be a friend of the cartel. That's not what I'm doing this for. At this point, do you think he's decided he does want to be a friend of the cartel? Or is he just taking it one step at a time? Let me make this $100,000. That's a lot of money that I want. And then I'll take it from there.
Right, I'll see what happens, or maybe I can do a little bit here and there for them. Maybe I think and you see that later in this episode, the idea of the game, right? You're in the game or you're not in the game. I think he doesn't realize that there's no half measures, as Mike would say. You can't just have one foot in this world.
Right.
But maybe at this point he thinks he can.
Yeah. And another tidbit from this scene is, we've referenced this Breaking Bad scene so many times because it is one that has influenced so much of what we saw in Better Call Saul. But back in Breaking Bad, when Walt and Jesse first hired Saul to be their lawyer, they drove him out to the desert. Saul thought he was about to be killed, and he starts to yell, did Lalo send you? It wasn't me. It was Ignacio, i.e. Nacho. But he also has another line where he says, Yo soy amigo del cartel. So we know, and for those of you that didn't take Spanish in high school, what he's saying there is, I'm a friend of the cartel. So he does officially become a friend of the cartel.
Yeah. Also, we know that his Spanish improves between this period of time and Better Call Saul.
Oh, drastically improves.
There's also just one little subtle foreshadowing I picked up on in this scene with Kim when he's saying, everything's gonna go smoothly. I'll handle the deal. I'll drive out there and I'll be out of there like a shot.
That's right. Yeah.
And I picked up on that because who says that?
Aerosol Can, and again, love that name. I love the origin of that name too. He says the death of Saul's esteem equals the death of Jimmy? Question mark.
So that car has been a huge, just visual symbol throughout the whole show. This beat up old yellow, pale, ugly car. It's like a part of who he is, and in general, people tend to get pretty attached to their cars, and so there is something to seeing that car just get pushed off the cliff.
Right. And I do think it symbolizes something. I do think it symbolizes a major turning point and a point of development for Saul, but I wouldn't put it in the terms of death of Jimmy. And the reason I wouldn't is because a huge part of Jimmy's character is that chip he has on his shoulder, where people see him as small and powerless. And the Saul Goodman character is sort of a response to that. He wants to be seen as powerful. But I think the core motivation, which was also part of Jimmy, is consistently there. So it's the death maybe of certain parts of Saul's character, maybe the meek part of him.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily say that's Jimmy. I think a part of the quote-unquote Jimmy character is always there and part of his motivation.
I think in Breaking Bad, people often talked about you have Walter White who becomes Heisenberg, and it's almost become a meme at this point and it was at that point that he became Heisenberg, right? Whereas so I think that's a show about transformation, whereas I think this is a show about Jimmy becoming more of himself.
Yeah, and or another way I think about it is it's sort of transformation on a more surface level, but it's about being trapped. I feel like Jimmy is moving down this path, but there's still this good heart and this good soul that's sort of trapped inside this Saul Goodman shell now. So where Walt became evil, it's almost like Saul gets entrenched in this evil world, and it's a little bit more tragic than what happened to Walt. Walt's story is tragic because of what happens to the people around him, whereas Saul's story is tragic because of what happens to him, is kind of the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Though, depending on what happens to Kim.
That's true. That's a big depending.
Though even that, Kim has been complicit in a lot of what's happening. So she's not exactly an innocent bystander in all this.
And Drew Leonard's actually has a response to this idea of the death of Jimmy and when he becomes the kind of lawyer who might actually kill someone or think maybe we need to send this person to Belize. And I agree with Drew. I think Saul isn't necessarily quite there yet, but I think after this episode, it will sound much more realistic for him.
Yeah, agreed. So Saul goes to a well, which was one of the landmarks that Lalo gave him, where he's going to meet the twins.
And Saul's like, "What does it look like?" And Lalo's like, "It looks like a well.
It's the only well out there."
Yeah.
And of course, in Better Call Saul Breaking Bad style, you get an awesome shot from inside the well looking up at Saul.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Just a note to make on that is when we see that cool shot from inside the well, you see like some kind of toy or action figure in the water at the bottom.
Yeah.
And nothing like that on this show is an accident. And we also at some point actually, in the opening to the show, we see a tarantula walking around the desert. Later in the episode, when Saul is, I don't know how close he is to death, but he's not looking good. You also see a tarantula walking around. And the tarantula, the only thing I can think of when I think of tarantulas is the child from Breaking Bad in the desert that they had to shoot.
That Todd killed.
Yeah. And I don't think they're trying to draw a direct connection, but I don't think it's a mistake either. I think it's getting us to think about being involved with something kind of sickening
and consequences.
Exactly.
So out there, you have another great shot of the desert. It feels like it's been a while since we got one of those. We were hanging out in the beautiful Albuquerque desert. This is in Mexico here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's near the border.
That's right. That's right.
Because you can tell because everything wasn't all yellow.
That's right. Yeah. And Saul's practicing over and over. Yo soy abogado, which means I am an attorney, which I don't know why he finds it so important to tell the twins that. And then he cleans off his shoes with some of the water from his water bottle.
Right. And we were watching with our dad, and he made a point of saying, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. And you could say it's a little bit on the nose, like, come on, they're really just going to so over the top telegraph the fact that he's going to really need water later. But I don't think that's a knock. I think they're trying to build dread. It's not like the writers put that in and they think they're being so clever. It's they're ramping up the tension. They want us to know how deeply in trouble Saul's going to be this episode.
I also think it says something about Saul. I think we know that no matter what situation Saul gets in, he's going to find a way out. And I think subconsciously he feels the same way. So he doesn't even think twice about wasting a little bit of water.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's sort of like what Lalo says later in the episode, which is, Saul, he's like La Cucaracha, right?
Yeah.
He'll survive, even though he doesn't know anything about him.
Yeah.
But I think Saul knows that too. I don't think he takes these risks too seriously.
Well, and remember where we left him last episode. He was screaming to Howard how he's literally a god.
Yeah.
So I think he's feeling some bravado right now.
Yeah.
So the twins show up. They hand him the bags. Saul tries to talk to them. They, in classic twin fashion, don't respond. And Saul says, all right, I'll take these back to Lalo. You guys are just going to take off? That'll work. Buenos dias. So Saul starts driving away, singing to himself, $7 million of cash in the trunk. And again, they're just ramping up the tension here because he keeps looking away from the road. They keep doing this shot where it's from the front of the car pointed back at him. And you just feel like something is about to go wrong.
Right. And like you remember the time that Kim crashed her car. Whenever I see someone driving on TV, even if it's like a comedy show, in my head, I'm like, don't crash, don't crash, don't crash.
Yeah.
Because they never look like they're paying attention. And then Kim was like one of the first times I ever actually saw that crash happen. And now I'm really gun shy. So when this was happening with Saul, and I think they did this on purpose. I was just scared for him that he was going to crash.
Yeah, they ramped up the tension, and they don't waste any time. We immediately get a Jeep behind him, getting closer and closer and closer. 2 other cars show up. A bunch of guys get out. They corner him, hold up guns to him. Saul starts saying abogado because that worked so well last time. The guys don't waste any time. They open up the trunk. They find the money, and immediately one of them gives the order. He does the throat slit sign. Saul starts saying, no, that's not what he meant. That's not what he meant. A guy holds a gun up to Saul. He's about to shoot him, and then blood on Saul's shirt. The other guy got shot, and they all get taken out with surgical precision. We see some great shots of a bullet going through one of the headlights of a car, going into a guy's head. We see another car show up, a pickup truck, and Saul picks up a gun, thinks about, I guess, getting involved in the fight, throws it away, and just kind of lays still.
I talked about this in the instant take, but as you're describing the scene, like, I can feel my heart racing again because I'm just thinking about it. And then I started thinking about that scene in Breaking Bad when a sniper starts taking people out by the distribution center for Pollos Hermanos. Do you remember when Jesse's there and someone's head just blows up right next to him? And Jesse just freezes like a deer in the headlights and just kind of looks off into the distance, and Mike saves his life.
Yeah, and so similar story here.
Yeah.
So pickup truck arrives. Somebody gets out. We don't know who it is. The face is obscured for some reason. Now, I think when we saw the tires specifically get shot out, we knew this was someone smart. So I think we were all thinking Mike. But it was just so funny that they were going out of their way to obscure who it is. So Mike shows up in his...
in part, it makes sense because there's no way that Saul ever would have thought that was Mike. It just wouldn't have occurred to him. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, exactly. And Dax Snare in the chat says surgical made me think Mike. And that's exactly We're great minds think alike.
And just to amend what I said, there are some reasons he would think it was Mike, because Mike's the one who said we got to get Lalo out.
Right.
That's true. But I feel like in the moment that would be far from his mind.
Nice. You just avoided a bunch of angry
I know.
emails. You fool. How could you not think it'd be Mike? I also want to point out, by the way, this is one of the things Better Call Saul does better than any other show. 1 minute ago, you and I were talking about what happened in the scene, laughing. And then 30 seconds later, you say, my heart's racing just thinking about it. The way they can combine violence, tension, but also make us laugh at the same time, just incredible. And also incredible, we talked about this a bunch in the instant take, but the fact that they're able to make us so nervous for two characters, Mike and Saul, that have the most plot armor you could possibly have.
Yeah.
We know they don't die. Just amazing. So Mike shows up, and he's fully in fixer mode. We've said it before. It feels like we're seeing Breaking Bad Mike for the first time in the series, just fully confident. It seems he's no longer struggling with who he is, right? He's fully accepted his role, and I think later in the episode, we fully understand why he's so confident. It's because he understands why he's doing what he does, right?
He's reached henchman enlightenment.
That's right. And it makes me wonder, what do we do with Mike from here? Because this has been the arc of his character, and it feels like we've arrived at the point now. He's working for Gus, so logistically, he's where he needs to be for Breaking Bad, and from a character standpoint, he's where he needs to be. He's accepted his role. It seems like his arc is complete.
I think they're gonna present us with probably more family-oriented conflicts for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's possible we'll see him also face conflicts of morality, where he doesn't struggle with it as much as he struggled with Werner.
Right.
I think this is probably not the last time he has to kill someone who he sees as innocent, but I think we might see him do it and not flinch as much, which will probably be somewhat tragic for us to see, because we like Mike, we like him all the way through Breaking Bad, but we know he's going to have to do a lot of bad things.
So he's not necessarily developing as a character further, but it's sort of showing us, here's the dark side of the transformation he's made.
Right.
I also think he might turn a little bit more into a supporting character. If the Mike and Saul storylines are now combining, and it's no longer going to feel like two different shows, the Mike show and the Saul show, Mike might go a little bit into more of a supporting role, like he was in this episode. One of Mike's main functions in this episode was to help us understand Saul a little bit more, and to help push the Saul character forward. Basically telling Saul, you've got to figure out why you're doing all this. Yeah. And he might continue to function that way next season. Mike puts Saul in his car. They start driving away. Saul is in shock at this point. He's sitting in the car just poking out one of the bullet holes.
Oh, yeah.
Then the car starts making some noise, and the car dies. We had a great moment of Mike kind of hitting the steering wheel, which I loved.
Mike's a smart guy, right?
Right.
Is there any chance that could have done something?
Well, this is where his intelligence comes into it, because if that was me driving, I would have been punching the hell out of the steering wheel. Right. Mike holds back, though. He gives it a nice little tap. That's all.
It worked on the Super Nintendo yesterday.
That's true. I was going through your notes before this, and you wrote down, Mike and Saul are finally forced to hang out.
Yes, with a little smiley face I put, because we keep having these near misses. It's like, you know how every once in a while you see in the news, they'll be like, an asteroid just like glanced Earth by only a few 100 million miles, right? It came really close, but it didn't hit us. And that keeps happening with Mike and Saul.
Right. You
know, one calls the other and they kind of just hang up, or they're not interested. Finally, they're forced to spend some quality time together, and we get to watch.
And it makes for one of the best episodes ever of Better Call Saul.
Yeah. And I'd just like to acknowledge one thing in the chat that Johnny Cooper mentioned, which is Gus messed up getting Lalo locked up. And I think that's true. I think that was a mistake that happened. I don't know if it was exactly what Gus wanted, or if he kind of let Mike take on the project and decide what to do himself. But it was a mistake nonetheless. And the only thing I can think of with Gus and mistakes is when he tells Walter, never make the same mistake twice. Remember that? That was a pretty powerful line that he gave to Walt about not trusting Jesse, I think.
Right.
To be honest and to not revert back to kind of his street level criminal ways.
Right. So
And-
Gus should learn from this. Don't ever work with Mike again.
Yeah, and I think we see that. That's how it plays out, right?
Right.
No, so, but I do think this might lead to Gus learning a lesson. He lost a lot during this, right?
Yeah.
He had to burn down that his own restaurant. The whole operation's getting more and more entrenched in law enforcement. So this was an error, and it makes me wonder that what's going to happen. I think there will be fallout somehow.
Yeah, agreed. And so the car breaks down. Mike gets out, checks under the hood, and he says the alternator's shot, literally.
Oh yeah.
And then he opens the gas tank. And Adam, do you know why he did this? He takes the cap off.
I wasn't sure at the time, but do they end up they don't blow up the car after they throw it down the
No,
cliff,
so
do they?
Mike opens the gas tank, he removes the cap, and then they push the car over a cliff. Oh, and you looked like you were about to say something.
Well, it was related to what Adam just said, which was I assumed he wanted gas to pour out of it so the car would explode, maybe destroying some evidence.
Well, hold on. Does he end up using that cap for any reason later?
No, not later.
Right
but,
away?
man, you guys
He
disappoint me.
puts it in his pocket or something. What did he tell?
Right.
What does he
Okay,
do?
so how did Mike even know where Saul was? Remember seasons ago when someone put a tracker on Mike's car and he had to tear it apart?
God.
Johnny Cooper in the chat knows what I'm talking about. It was to track Saul. That's
Whoa.
right. It's what's it called when a gun shows up and you know it's going to come into play later?
Is it Chekhov's gun?
Chekhov's gun. It's Chekhov's gas tank cap. And it's and congrats to Johnny Cooper, Aerosol Can, and John Doe in the chat who were ahead of me on that one. So they and before they push the car over the cliff, Saul says, wait, runs to the car and grabs the world's second best lawyer mug, which now has a bullet through it.
Seeing that bullet hole in there was pretty sad. That was like a loss of innocence kind of moment.
Yeah, and it also it's rare to see Saul at all sentimental, and I've made reference to it a few times. We know he has a heart. We see it here and there, but it was nice to see the sentimental attachment to the mug that Kim gave him.
Yeah, and it's sad to think that there's a chance he'd be afraid for her to ever see it now.
Right. And I mean, I kind of touched on it already, but it makes me wonder about Kim. How does Saul think about Kim? How much thought has he given to how she fits into his future? It seems like he hasn't really thought about the fact that his line of work is going to put her in danger. And I just wonder how much she plays into his motivation. And I think the answer up until now is it hasn't been a big part of his motivation. He loves her. He wants to be with her, but he's not like Mike where he's doing stuff for her. I don't think he's given thought to having to support her anyway.
Right,
I mean, he doesn't need to. She's very successful.
Yeah, she's so independent. It's if anything, he. I don't even know if he needs her either, but I think there's a psychological benefit for him.
Right. Yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is I wonder where she falls in his priorities.
Mm-hmm.
If it came down to a real choice between, and I was kind of getting at this earlier, is there anything Kim could have said which would have made Saul change his mind about going out in the desert? And I don't know the answer to that. There might be no way for her to convince him not to do it. We've seen in the past, this is twice now, she's asked him not to do something, and he's just done it anyway.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it was down to a choice between Kim or being a friend of the cartel, what would his choice be? And I think it might be friend of the cartel.
And Dax makes a good point that the mug Kim gave him that now has the bullet hole in it could be potential foreshadowing for a violent outcome for Kim.
Potentially.
And if not violent, it could at least indicate that this either puts their relationship in danger or Kim in danger.
Yep, exactly. I think that's what everybody is worried about coming out of this episode, if we weren't already worried. So Saul and Mike begin their journey across the desert. Of course, Saul is the one carrying the $7 million in those two duffel bags. He does suggest, how about we take turns with these bad boys, so we both stay fresh. Of course, Mike doesn't answer. A lot of people just not really acknowledging Saul's existence in this episode.
Right. And Mike made the right decision here because he's the one with all the survival skills and the weapons and the ability to defend them. So I think it was right to make Saul the Bagman.
Yeah, and also Mike's got a few years on Saul.
Yeah, but he doesn't show it this episode.
No, not at all. In fact, that was one of the reasons where he first showed up. That was one of the reasons we suspected it wasn't Mike, because you commented that his gait didn't look quite as, I don't even know how to describe it, creaky.
Yeah,
as it normally does.
It's funny. I think I've commented on Mike's gait in particular during other episodes of Saulcast last season.
You have.
Where it's been like, who is that person? I don't know. The gait doesn't look quite like Mike, and then it turns out to be him. So maybe I just overestimate how rickety I'm expecting him to appear.
Well, it's when the adrenaline hits, when it counts, he can summon his abilities
to walk
normal. And then so Saul suggests, why don't we bury the money so we can walk back without it? Let's work smarter, not harder. Mike tells him he's never going to remember where it was buried. Saul reassures him, I'll memorize the landmarks. This mountain looks very mountainy, and this tree over here. And then they see a car coming. And it's important to mention, we kind of glossed over it, they're taking a long route here, right? They're not walking on the road because one person survived the shootout earlier. That person is going to come looking for them. Yeah. And at this point, they see a car coming, so the guy found them.
Right. And that just taking the road, which I'm guessing is a more direct route, was 30.6 miles, as Lalo specified.
Yeah, that's right. And they walk off to, avoid, walk away from the road to avoid being seen. And then another very cool shot where they do a sort of time lapse of the clouds going by, even though it looks like Saul and Mike are still walking at normal pace. But it just emphasizes how long of a journey they're on. And love the back and forth now between Saul and Mike. And I think what's the takeaway from this scene? At first I thought it's showing us how much more Saul needs to learn about survival and about tactics in this battle when you're surrounding yourself by horrible people, where you might find yourself in a situation where you need to know, I've got to stay off the road because someone survived the gun battle I was just in. But then it hit me, I don't think that's exactly the lesson for Saul. I don't think he's ever going to have that expertise. I think it's more him realizing he needs a Mike.
Yeah.
He needs a fixer. He needs somebody that knows this stuff, which is also part of why I think Mike may start to take on a supporting role in Saul's storyline next season.
And I think in general, we see our view of Saul during Breaking Bad is that he's this guy who always knows a guy who knows a guy who can do something.
Right.
And I think between this show and what we see in Breaking Bad, his network grows dramatically. And I think experiences like this teach him how valuable it is to find competent people with really special skills in this world. Yeah,
exactly. So Saul goes to drink some of his limited water. Mike tells him to go easy on it. Then as night falls, Mike decides to stop. Saul's wondering why they're stopping, and Mike explains that if you walk at night, you'll break your leg in a prairie dog hole. Saul climbs around trying to get signal on his phone, probably trying to reach Kim, and then the two of them settle down for the night. So Saul says aloud, this is going to tear her up. And that leads to a conversation between him and Mike where it's revealed that Saul's girlfriend, his wife, knows where they are. And Mike basically tells Saul she's in the game now. Once she knows what you're up to, she's in the game. And he worries, what's your wife going to do when you don't come home tonight? Is she going to call the cops, her mother, the girls at the book club? Saul assures Mike she's smarter than that. She's not going to go to the cops. Don't worry about her. And Mike, of course, looks skeptical. Then Mike says we can't make a fire, but it's going to get cold, offers Saul a space blanket, who turns it down and says he'll be fine. Now, when Saul turns down that space blanket, do you think it's A, he's just annoyed at Mike for the whole Kim thing and just doesn't want to take his advice? Or could it be that any part of him is just put off by the whole concept of space blankets because he associates them with Chuck?
I think it's both. Now, at the time that I watched this, I totally forgot. Chuck, at this point, feels so far removed from everything that I really didn't even think about his space blankets that he would use.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as it got mentioned to me, I was like, yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah. And John Doe says in the chat, Saul destroyed all good/respectable things about Jimmy by destroying his car, pissing on Davis and Maine. By the way, the mug he will urinate in later is a Davis and Maine.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
receptacle. And throwing away at memories of Chuck.
Isn't Davis and Maine also where he kept clogging the toilet?
That's right. Yeah. And one of the best Better Call Saul montages we've had. And I think John Doe is hitting on something very accurate here, which is this episode pretty much strips Jimmy Saul down to nothing. Right? In the last episode, big bravado, I'm God, I shoot lightning from my fingertips, to the total opposite this episode, where he's compared to a cockroach by Lalo, and he is just stripped away to the point where he's about to give up on life itself.
Right. And when you just take a step back from the string of events that leads to all of this stuff happening, and you just say, okay, there's this man, he was a professional lawyer, he went off the deep end and started selling a bunch of cell phones because he got disbarred to criminal. He started selling a bunch of cell phones to criminals. Then he got back into law. He has this public outburst at the courthouse where he declares that he's God and shoots lightning bolts from his fingertips. Yeah. Then a few days later, he's stuck in the desert with no food or water after being surrounded by a bunch of people whose heads got blown up. And now he's drinking his own urine. Like, it sounds like someone who had a mental break, even though he didn't.
Yeah, arguably maybe he did have a mental break.
But it's not. It's like not a psychosis, but it's an amazing life.
Yeah, and Johnny Cooper brings up a good point. He can't tell Lalo what happened because he can't tell him Mike helped and ask for more money.
Right. So I think he's going to have to lie about this, and I think Mike's probably going to tell him what to say.
Yeah, that's true. I'm so interested in what the fallout's going to be from this episode, and I initially thought there's going to be fallout in regard to the snitch, the rat in the Salamanca organization, but Lalo may not even find out about that right now.
Yeah.
Because when Saul gets back, if he says, yeah, a bunch of guys tried to steal the money, there's no way Lalo's going to believe that Saul managed to fend them off just by himself.
Right. Unless he says, I'm actually quite the MMA fighter.
Yeah. So, Saul has just reassured Mike that, don't worry, Kim's not going to do anything dumb, like go and see the cops or talk to the cops. Cut to Kim in prison to see Lalo.
Yes.
Kim cuts right to the chase and says, you want to know where your money is. I want to know where Saul Goodman is. All I need to know is where you sent Saul. I won't alert the authorities. When Lalo hesitates, she says, Mr. Salamanca. So she gives away that she knows who he is. Lalo, I think for the first time, I don't recall seeing him truly angry before. Yeah. Usually he's pretty jovial. He's making people uncomfortable. But here he says, who the hell are you that he tells you my business? And he truly did not seem happy.
Do you think that is this does she have leverage over him at all by knowing his identity? Is that something he's a little bit worried about, at least? Like, if something bad did happen to him, she can reveal who I really am.
I mean, she has some leverage because he, of course, doesn't want people to know that he's connected to the Salamancas. He doesn't want people to know his real name. So she has some leverage, but he also has leverage because he has a lot more power than her. Mm-hmm. And if he wants her dead, it's going to be hard to stop that from happening.
Yeah. He says, your man is like La Cucaracha, born survivor.
Yeah. Don't worry about him. He'll show up.
Yeah. And if he doesn't, a day isn't going to make a difference anyway, will it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Kim tries to explain the whole thing. She tells Lalo, I'm his wife. We have spousal privilege. Lalo's also very impressed. He was like, good for Saul.
He besides that thing about who the hell is he to tell you my business, besides that, he seems totally cool and collected this whole time.
Yeah, he does. There's a moment where I think he loses his cool a little bit, but he's right back to his usual jovial self.
Yeah. Now, Kim definitely shouldn't feel collected after this because I think her odds of surviving decreased substantially.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the instant take, and I think where we landed is I don't see Lalo making a move against Kim right away.
Yeah.
I don't think he has any reason to kill her right now. In fact, he has a lot of reason to keep her alive because that just gives him more leverage over Saul. Saul's been hesitant to help him here and there, but he's always gotten the job done, so I think Lalo will want Saul to continue working for him, and he's going to want leverage. So it's just helpful to know here's a person that Saul deeply cares about. So also, yeah, you mentioned the cockroach comparison, and little does Lalo even know that Saul is one of the few that comes out of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Just surviving into the gene timeline.
So either Lalo is very, very perceptive, or it's a lucky guess.
Yeah. So we revisit Mike and Saul out in the desert. Saul goes to use the bathroom. Mike tells him he wouldn't waste that, and then it dawns on Saul exactly what he's saying. So he saves his urine, and Mike tells him he doesn't have enough water for the both of them. And then I have to look up what song was playing, but there was sort of a funny song that plays, and we get a walking montage.
It's a good beat, at least, that I know is. So there's this I don't know what to call him, an artist, MF Doom. I like to listen to a lot of his music. He samples a lot of interesting beats from like other songs, and this one was in one of his really good songs that I like. So when I heard it, I got really into the scene.
Also, I can't take credit for this. I think somebody posted it on Reddit, but they mentioned this is a good callback in this scene to what Nacho told Saul a few episodes ago. He said, "When you're in, you're in."
Urine.
That's right. So nice little pun there for you. So
do you think that was on purpose?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah, it really could be legit. Yeah.
So in this montage, we see Saul is not doing well. His lips are very dry. And we cut to a scene of Mike pouring just the tiniest amount of water into a cap for Saul to drink. Saul drinks it. He asks for more. Mike says no. Saul says more. And Mike says, if you want more. And then he points to the cup of urine.
Yeah.
We'll see how many times we can go saying that word in this video.
Without me giggling.
And then Saul says, hold it. I have an idea. And he ties the two bags to his waist. Mike says, that's not going to work. And then Saul just starts walking through the desert.
I'm flattered.
Dragging the bags behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know, or at least later in the episode, we learn why that's not a good idea, right? Dragging those bags across the desert. What were you going to say?
I think we both right away said, don't do that. You're going to get a hole.
Yeah, it's going to rip the bag. You're going to lose the money. Now, Mike could have pressed harder. If he had said to Saul, if you drag him, it's going to rip open. I think Saul might have listened to him. Why do you think Mike let him make that mistake?
It could be that Mike is just a little tired right now. And maybe he's... You mentioned the possibility that it's almost to like teach him a lesson, right? Either it's the lesson of just listen. If I tell you I wouldn't do that, just listen to me because I'm right. And I shouldn't have to explain myself. Or maybe he was just like, I'm fed up with this guy. I don't care anymore. I'll let him rip a hole in it.
Right. And I lean towards he wanted to teach him a lesson. And when Mike does that, when he did it with Jesse, when he does it with Nacho, it seems to be because he wants to mentor them in some way.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would see Mike as a mentor to Saul, except in moments. Of course, there's a big moment this episode where he does act in a mentor-like capacity. But does Mike see Saul as an asset to himself, an asset to potentially Gus down the road, and maybe that's why he wants to teach Saul something here?
Well, so in one way, he's an immediate asset because Gus needs Saul to get that money to Lalo so he can get out of prison. So in a practical sense, yes, he's an asset, but also they've known each other a long time now, right? Ever since Saul would just argue with him in the parking lot. So they have a lot of shared experience and a similar path of kind of getting sucked into all these intersecting worlds here. And I think he does recognize that Saul is skilled at some of this stuff. He could be valuable.
Right. So I think...
Sorry, and one last thing. I think part of Mike's character is he does gravitate toward the mentor role. And that's a thing this universe explores a lot. You have it with Walt and Jesse. You even have it to an extent with Gus and Gale, right?
That's right, yeah.
You have it with Mike and Nacho. You have it with Mike and Saul.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really frequent theme here, and I think it's in part because of Mike's origins with his losing his son.
Right, and John Doe in the chat says, Mike is as much a fatherly figure as he is a thug. And he does go into fatherly figure mode when he sees something in you that triggers it. And in this case, it's triggered by Saul, and he does mentor him a bit, right? In letting him make the mistake with the bags. It costs him a bit. Some of the money flies out. They have to stop for a minute. But he weighs the cost and benefits, right?
Yeah.
It's going to cost me a little bit, but it's going to benefit Saul tremendously because it's a big lesson
It's
for
like
him.
letting your child make their own mistakes within reason. And I also think that what Saul does at the end when he gets fed up and kind of has enough, puts his life in danger, almost to pressure Mike into doing something a little more bold. I bet Mike comes out maybe respecting that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Dax Snare in the chat says Saul meets Mike's expectations. And I think that's essentially what you're saying. So Mike and Saul continue walking. While Mike's walking, he looks back at Saul, kind of annoyed that Saul's walking with the bags tied to him, dragging him across the desert. And then the moment hits where Mike asks, "You gonna get that?" And then Saul realizes that money is falling out of his bag.
Mm-hmm.
While Saul is running around collecting those bills, Mike, of course, knows how to plug that hole. He grabs the license plate of a busted car and sticks it in the bag so no more money falls out.
Just realized something. Saul is going to need a new... Not only is Saul going to need a new car, but maybe he's going to need a new license plate, a new ID. Maybe this is when he gets lawyer up.
That's right. One more step towards truly becoming Saul Goodman. While Saul is collecting the money, he gets stabbed by a cactus, and it goes deep.
Mm-hmm.
He pulls the thing several inches out of his toe, and it's covered in blood, and he says, "I'm done. I'm going to die in the dirt one way or another. Just get it over with." Mike tells him you have to drink, and he's referring to the urine.
Yes.
And then Saul says, "Why?"
It's part of his initiation into being Mike's mentee.
And Mike yells, "Why?" So they can find a corpse with a mouthful of piss. "How the hell are you still going?" "Because I know why I'm still out here. What it's for." "What's it for? What is it for?" And Mike explains he has people that are waiting for him back home. They don't know what I do. They never will. They're protected. If I live or die, it doesn't really matter as long as they get what they need. And I know I did everything I could for them. You ask me how I keep going? That's how. So he's basically telling Saul, in so many words, you screwed up with Kim. She shouldn't know what you're doing. If you are fighting for her, she shouldn't know what you're up to because that's how you protect her. Mm-hmm. And he's also telling Saul, you've got to figure out why you're out here. And I do find myself wondering why he's out here. What's he doing all this for? I mean, that's been such a big part of this show. So many episodes of Saulcast have been you and me asking ourselves, why is Saul doing this? Right. What is his motivation?
And that answer was never Kim.
No, I don't think it was. And I think it's so great to see Saul just everything ripped away from him right now. He's taken down to his lowest point, and finally he's forced to confront that answer or forced to confront that question because he's so putting himself in danger. He's got to ask himself, why?
Yeah.
And I don't think we're done exploring that question, but I love that we see Saul have to face that here.
You know, this starts to remind me also of the episode of the first episode of Breaking Bad when Walt gets caught literally with his pants down in the desert. he's pointing the gun out at the horizon because he thinks maybe the cops are showing up. Then he puts the gun to his own head, and he actually pulls the trigger, by the way.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? He fully intended to blow his own head off. And it turns out either it wasn't loaded or he didn't do something right with the gun. But we see him at one of his lowest points, at least thus far in the series. It was episode 1. But he got fed up. He was in the middle of the desert, pushed to the brink. And it's a really transformative scene for his character, and I think very similarly it's a transformative scene for Saul here.
Yeah, it just took 5 years to get there.
Yeah.
Instead of 20 minutes.
Yeah, Walt was always a little more intense.
That's right. And as if things couldn't get worse, Saul's about to give up, doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
The guy shows up, the one who got away from the gunfight. So Mike tells Saul to lie low. They're going to have to wait him out. But Saul doesn't have the patience for that. So he gets up and puts the foil on, puts the space blanket on like a cape, basically, and then just walks out into the desert, makes himself an open target for the guy.
Well, and I think in a way, this is the answer in terms of what is Saul Goodman's purpose? Why is he doing any of this? I don't think he knows exactly why he's doing any of it, but the reason he keeps going is because he thinks of a way out of whatever situation he got himself into. Right. So here he is on the ground, no more will to live or do anything. Then when he finds out someone else might get him, he can't allow that. I think he's still competitive. He still refuses to be the victim of another person. If he is going to die, it's going to be because he gave up and just laid down and died. I don't think he is going to accept that someone else hunted him down.
Right.
And not just that, but when he thinks of something he can do, some way to manipulate the circumstances, that motivates him to keep going.
Right. And that's why I always hesitate to treat Jimmy and Saul as two different people, because a lot of what you just said also applies to Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Right. He manipulates Mike in this situation.
That's right. Because he forces Mike's hand. By Saul running out there and letting himself get spotted, that means that Mike now needs to get his rifle out and he needs to kill the guy. And it's a tough shot. The guy's driving. And in fact, he misses the first shot and then he makes the second one. And the camera angle is set up so that Saul's in the foreground. The car's coming at him. It looks like it's going to hit him. And then after the guy gets killed, the car starts flipping and gets destroyed. So Mike walks over to the car with his pistol ready. The guy's dead, and unfortunately, so is the jug of water that the guy had.
That was such a cool clip right there.
Right. So there is no reprieve for Saul here. And this is just about the end of the episode. So Saul has just done this almost life-ending act, almost sacrificed himself, and it somehow reinvigorated him. Now he's ready to go on. Takes a swig of urine, and the two of them walk off into the distance, and that's the end of the episode. And I think this might be the first time, at least that I've seen in film or television history, where a character drinking their own urine is like a symbolic major moment. Yeah. That was the triumphant moment of, I have chosen to continue living, so I am going to do this disgusting and difficult thing because I've decided to go on living. And my question in that moment is, what gave him the courage to keep going? Did Mike snap something loose in his head where Saul now knows why he's doing this? Or did it just motivate him to say, I need to figure out why I'm doing this, so I'm going to go on? What do you think got him to get up and decide to keep walking out of the desert?
So I think it's a combination of things. I think there's truth to it when Kim says, I think you're talking yourself into this, right? She was worried that Saul was basically coming up with reasons why this would be safe just to convince himself to do it rather than truly thinking it through.
Right.
And I think in part he realizes, he agrees with Mike, I do need a reason to do this. I need a purpose. But the other thing is he's being driven by this feeling of, I'm really good at this. Right.
Yeah.
Like this guy has been haunting them for like 2 days in the desert, and he decided to take actions into his own hands, do something a little reckless, and it paid off.
Right.
And the payoff, the feeling he gets from that is addictive.
Yeah.
And I think he's maybe getting closer to understanding and embracing this and becoming even better.
Right. And I want to believe that he's put in so much danger here. When he gets back, he's going to want to play it safe. We, of course, know that's not the case. And I think there's probably a pretty big adrenaline rush that comes from this, like you said. And when he gets that $100,000 paycheck, that's going to be a big motivator for him to do more of this and potentially finally realize what he's actually worth. And that $100 paycheck pretty soon is going to feel pretty small to him.
Yeah, it's going to be like ant. He's going to be like, is this a paycheck for ants? This reminded me of a quote actually from Nietzsche. All right, and it's a man with a why can put up with almost any how, or something like that. It basically means if you have a purpose or a goal or a target, you can basically tolerate anything,
right?
If you're committed enough. And I think in a way, Saul's why is his how, right? The how being coming up with schemes, putting together plans, taking risks, and doing really bold stuff. That's both his purpose in life and his way of life.
It's like somebody with a gambling addiction, where it's not about winning, it's about going through the process of gambling, right? Even when they lose, that's part of the addiction.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good way of putting it. It's the how and why getting mixed up together. John Doe in the chat asks, who tipped off the gang about the money exchange and why? I don't think we know who it is. We know it's somebody in the Salamanca organization. He was in the stash house. I think the why is I don't think it's complicated. It's probably just a way for him to make money. He doesn't have the power to go out there and steal the $7 million, but he knows somebody who does. And he probably gets a pretty good commission for tipping them off to, there's $7 million out there for you to steal. So I'm assuming he's purely motivated by money here.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only question is, like we talked about already, I guess, is what's the fallout to this? When is Lalo going to find out there's a rat in his organization? Is he going to come face to face with that other gang? Assuming they are a formidable force, it might literally just be a group of guys and Mike just killed all of them. So it might not be much more of the storyline. So I guess any more thoughts on the episode as a whole?
I mean, it was so good. And the next two are supposed to be also very intense as far as I
forget which one. I think the next episode is going to be 1 hour and 25 minutes long.
That's like a
minutes.
film length.
Yeah, with
commercials
though,
but
yeah. That's like a Game of Thrones episode length.
You have to remind me about that.
Adam, you have a medical background?
I do.
And a lot of very gullible people out there watched this episode. They watched Saul drink his own urine and everything seemed fine.
And of course, they all went and did it too.
Exactly. So just to be safe, can you tell us, if you're stuck in the desert, if you are at risk of dehydration, should you recycle, so to speak?
No.
Really, that's it?
Yeah, you shouldn't. And it's because it's for the same reason you shouldn't drink like seawater in that situation, because you're basically just the stuff that you pee out. Your kidneys are very smart. They're taking your blood, they're filtering out all the junk that you don't need, all the extra electrolytes and salt that you have. They're getting rid of it. If you put that back in your body, you're just giving your body more work to do. You're not rehydrating it, because you're not increasing the ratio of water to salt that you have. And that's what it means to be thirsty, basically, is to strive for a rebalancing of those two things. So all you're doing is giving your whole body more work to do. You're injuring your kidneys further, and you're making your blood more toxic.
All right. I'm going to get a second opinion on this, because I've seen 127 Hours. Aaron Ralston.
And he did, in real life, Aaron Ralston really did drink his own.
And you're saying he shouldn't have done that?
According to the medical community, as well as the U.S. Military Survival Field Manual.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, for the folks watching this right now, you're welcome.
Put that cup down.
Yeah.
Now,
spit that out.
There is a way. That said, your urine could still be valuable. So I don't want you to just I don't want you to just do it wherever you want when you're in a survival situation. Here's what you do. All right. I have a figure A here, all right? This is what we call a water still. We saw Mike make one of these this episode. You saw how he took this vegetation and he put it on the ground. He put like kind of a cup, or I think he put his canteen bucket in the middle or whatever, covered it with some kind of tarp or material. What's happening is the sun hits that whole area, and any moisture that was in the vegetation evaporates up. But because it has nowhere to go, it gets pooled on that little tarp. And because you have a rock weighing it down in the middle, the water pools and drips down into the bottle. And now you have purified water free from all the extra schmutz. Okay? So what you could do is dig that hole and pee in the hole. So now you have all this moisture, and make the exact same setup where instead of leaves in that picture, it's pee. and then basically all you have to do is let the sun hit it. You collect whatever evaporates.
Wow.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're listening to this as a podcast, you're really missing out right now because there's visuals now. Adam's got a diagram pulled up and everything. So if you're listening to this, make sure to check out that link in the description to see us on YouTube. And then we promised at the beginning of this episode that there is a major Saulcast announcement, and we're about to get into that. Before we do that, we had another visual prepared, right?
Oh, I believe we did.
Right, you said that this reminded you of the Conch episode of SpongeBob.
For anyone who remembers the Magic Conch episode of SpongeBob, it's a similar survival situation where Patrick, SpongeBob, and Squidward all get stuck in the middle of the underwater forest, and Patrick and SpongeBob seem to basically have created a cult out of this magic conch where you pull on the string and it tells them what to do. And at one point, Squidward's really freaking out. He doesn't know how they're going to survive. He starts trying to collect seaweed for food. And SpongeBob is like, "Magic conch, what should we do?" And he pulls on the string and she just goes, "Nothing." And so they just sit there while Squidward's freaking out. And it reminded me of when Saul was like freaking out and scrambling about what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of here? And Mike is like, we have to just sit here and wait because it's not getting dark. That guy's going to find us if we keep moving around. And Mike is keen on just waiting there and allowing time to pass. Right. And Saul is not. So he's being a Squidward here.
There you go. So that's the keen analysis you come to Saulcast for.
Exactly.
And Dax Snare in the chat says, think Saul's reason was getting out from under his brother's weight. And that's a really good point because that was definitely a big part of his motivation early on. And now that his brother is gone, what does that mean for Saul's motivation? Mr. Weeping Dalek in the chat says, we haven't seen Saul interact with Nacho much. How do you think Nacho will connect with Lalo and Saul? Well, we know that Nacho is under Lalo's thumb. And it seems like Saul is to some degree. He keeps getting pressured into doing these things for Lalo. And on top of that now, Lalo knows about Kim. So in the same way that the Salamancas have a gun to Nacho's head, they may now also have a gun to Kim's head. So I could very much see a scenario where Saul and Nacho end up working together to try to get out from under Lalo.
And don't forget that both of them are also sandwiched between Lalo and Gus.
That's right. So they're both in very similar situations. And I think Mike might actually be the one to connect the two of them. He might recognize, they might concoct a plan together to try and get the two of them out from under Lalo.
Which eventually, years later, leads Saul to say, "It wasn't me, it was Ignacio.
Did Lalo send you?
Yeah.
Yo soy amigo del cartel."
Yeah. He says that, which is, I love that they allude to that exact same phrase in this episode of being a friend to the cartel.
Yeah, exactly. So the big announcement, we won't bury the lead anymore. So we've been enjoying these live streams very much, and we were trying to think about how can we celebrate the finale this season. So what we're going to do a couple of weeks from now, before episode 10, the finale for this season, is a couple hours before the episode airs. We'll send details out for exactly what time that'll be, but think 2-3 hours before the finale airs, we're going to do a watch party, sort of a pregame, where we'll do a recap of the entire season up to that point to make sure you remember all the finer details that are going to come into play in that finale. We'll theorize, we'll make predictions, and just generally we'll all get hyped up for the finale.
It's going to be awesome. We did it before the El Camino premiere, and it was I've never seen Gil that happy.
It may have been the happiest I've ever been.
And I think we need that more than ever this year because we can't have the in-person watch parties. So I remember before the Breaking Bad series finale, I gathered a group of 20 of my friends, and you know that we were hardcore fans because not a single person talked for the entire finale, and there were 20 of us. I took a bunch of beer bottles and put a little Schrader Brow logo on them. I even from scratch made blue rock candy, to look like the meth. And it was so much fun. We can't do that this year because of this stupid virus.
That's right. Yeah. So you're all going to be our friends this year.
Yeah.
Instead of Adam's old friends.
Live 3-hour pregame watch party. And we're all going to get back together after the episode and do another live Saulcast that you know and love.
Right, we'll do the after show, and then a day or two after that, we'll do the full recap and analysis like we're doing now. But in addition to that,
yes,
in that 3-hour pregame, there's going to be a battle of sorts between the two of us here. Maybe our tech guy brother, Alun, will also get in on it.
I'll do it.
Okay.
In this episode of Better Call Saul, we saw Saul Goodman perform a physical feat of strength.
Yes.
Where he carried 2 duffel bags worth $7 million, 30 miles.
Right.
30.2 miles?
We have 30.6.
That's right.
Now, we have procured 2 duffel bags of $7 million. Actually, how many would this be? 6 of them.
Right.
Worth a total of $21 million for one pair for each of us.
That's
okay?
right.
And that weighs 154 pounds, per $7 million. We're going to have a race to see who can carry those across our yard as the fastest.
That's right. So which of us can complete the Saul Goodman challenge? Which of us will be Saul Goodman and which of us will be a slippin' Jimmy? you have to tune in to find out. So we don't have $7 million, but we'll get a couple duffel bags. We'll weigh them down to weigh as much as $7 million would.
So we're gonna put up the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
so 21 million.
We need $21 million because we have to do it all at once, right? We can't take turns.
and we will record the race.
That's right. That's right.
Premiere
we'll record
it
it
live during the watch party.
Yeah, and we'll send out the details. We're gonna somehow have a betting system. No real money involved. It's not a casino.
Yeah.
But just you'll be able to vote on who do you think is going to win that race. And sometime during that 3-hour watch party, we'll air that. And we'll see which of us comes out on top. So details forthcoming. And now, as always, we always ask people that if you're a fan of this show, if you enjoy this at all, if you could log into the Apple Podcasts app, look up Saulcast, and leave us a rating or a review. We really appreciate it. And anytime you do that, we shout it out on the show. So today we have a review from Ruben Kazan, who says, awesome show. Lots of insight and good knowledge of the show. So thank you, Ruben. You're awesome. And anybody who listens to this is awesome. Anyone who watches this on YouTube is awesome. But a little known secret is that if you also subscribe in addition to watching the show, you become even more awesome.
Like Mike was awesome when Better Call Saul began, but we know he becomes even more awesome as the show goes along.
That could be you. All you got to do is hit that little subscribe button, and you'll enter a whole new world of awesomeness,
of insights into Better Call Saul that you didn't even think were possible.
That's right. Let's see. Nick Leo says Gil's the man to beat. Adam's the man to watch.
I like that.
Yeah, he's not picking sides. That's good.
Alun's crazy though. He's like Lalo. Like he can. I don't know. He doesn't care about his body. Like he's reckless, and I think he will. Even if he like twists his ankle in the middle, he'll just keep going.
Yeah, even if he breaks his leg in a prairie dog hole.
Yeah,
I'll keep going.
He'll camp out there in a space blanket all night just to get in the zone.
Oh, if we can procure space blankets.
You have to do it wearing the space blanket. All right, Amazon.
That's right.
That's a survival necessity. I'm sure they'll deliver it on time for us.
All right, so details to come on the watch party, but look out for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And John Doe in the chat says, you guys have become my favorite BCS podcast in just 2 weeks. John Doe, that's awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. And I see a lot of people actually in the chat that have just started joining in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
They're becoming regulars, which is, it makes the chat so much more fun for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And hopefully for you too.
Yeah. Johnny Cooper says, do you think Lalo will stay in the States or go back to Mexico? And I think he's going to stay.
Yeah.
Because I just think he's going to be sort of the villain in the next season. Mm-hmm. So, and I think part of the reason he gave the fake name is so he could stay. He's going to have to keep a low profile. But I'm not sure. I've got to give that one some more thought.
I can't see Lalo running away.
Yeah. I don't see him as someone who's like afraid to get caught or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Nick says Adam can't talk about Insight. Nice pun until he gets in on that Westworld podcast.
That's true. So we've just earlier today we were talking about how I need to catch up on some shows so I can start to participate more. Next on my list is Devs. I'm going to catch up. I'm going to binge watch that tomorrow, just so I can catch up in time to be on a couple of these episodes. Westworld is soon to come.
Yes. So you've got 3 seasons.
I've seen season 1.
Oh, okay. All right. So you can catch up.
I think that was a reference to the company Insight in Westworld.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely was.
see, that's why
Adam doesn't even know. The pun is that there's a company prominently featured in Westworld called Insight, and Adam's over here talking about Insight like he knows what he's talking about.
By the way, since a lot of the shows that we cover on this channel are wrapping up their seasons, we need suggestions for what to cover next. We're always looking for good shows that give you something to think about.
Great shows. We don't want just good shows.
Yeah,
we want great shows.
All right, there's a lot of content out there right now, and it's not all like Quibi where you can watch it in 7 minutes.
That's right. So we're open to whatever suggestions that come to mind.
That's right. All right, so I think with that, just one more quick reminder. You're watching this on YouTube. If you're having a good time, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and of course, Hector Salamanca
ding,
style,
ding, 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 ding.
You got to hit that bell icon so you get notified the next time we go live. And with that, I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
I'm Alun.
And this is Saulcast, YouTube live stream.